A very good evening to everyone present here. We apologize for the slight delay in starting today's session. There were some technical glitches which have now been sorted. Today marks the 60th meeting hosted by the Study Circle. Our speaker for today is Mr. Ravindran, an advocate from the Madras High Court and a columnist. Today, he would be speaking on the topic Interstate Migrant Workmen Act and its importance. I invite Mr. Ilayaraja Kumar, an advocate from the Madras High Court, to give the welcoming address and a brief introduction of the speaker.
Good evening, friends. Today's resource person is Mr. R.S. Ravindran. Even though it is much introduction, I have been compelled to introduce him to the present session. He got enrolled in the year 2003. He joined the office of Mr. V. Venkatachalam as a junior, and he was with him for 2 years. Thereafter, he joined the office of Mr. A.V.K. Elilmani in the year 2005, and he continued to be with him till the year 2012. Thereafter, after his Mr. Elilmani, he started his independent practice in the Madras High Court, and also he is assisting senior advocate Dr. T.S. Ramasamy, former MBA secretary. He is practicing original side, applied side, writs, arbitration, banking and corporate laws. And that apart, he is also a panel lawyer for various banks. On a handful of banks, I am telling Canara Bank, Kadura Vysya Bank, Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank, and Karnataka Bank. That apart, he is also a legal expert member in Institutional Ethics Committee of SRM Medical College and Research Center. Apart from all these things, he is also a columnist. He writes various articles. Those articles also published in Times of India. And I am given to understand that he is regularly writing monthly legal column on law and ethics in pharma sector in Pharma Bio World, a Mumbai-based magazine with international circulation. That's all. I give it to you.
So before we dwell on the topic for today's webinar, I want to sincerely thank the organizers, especially our learned senior advocate of Madras High Court, Mr. Om Prakash sir. Thank you, sir, for having me here. So I like to share with you all why I grabbed this topic. This past year, COVID-19 has brought untold miseries on humankind. So while all the countries in the globe are putting up a brave front, we in India had additionally one more devil that disturbed us. What was it? Or rather, was it still is? Well, yes, it is the sorry plight of our interstate migrant workmen. So who are these interstate migrant workmen? Why did these interstate migrant workmen suffer? Was it a policy failure on the part of the governments, or was it an administrative mishandling of migrant workmen that resulted in all that chaos? So these are the questions that popped up in the minds of every responsible and concerned citizen of our country. To answer them is not easy, and that is precisely why we need to focus on the existing laws that govern the interstate migrant workmen in our country. Before we get into the sufficiency or insufficiency of workmen law, migrant workmen law, let us have a look at history surrounding the phenomenon called migration. A lot of us are made to believe that migration is a recent phenomenon, and that is only the fallout of the industrialized society or of our modern times. But in reality, if we are to look at the historical evidences, migration in animals, plants, and humans will tell us totally a different story. Migration is a behavioral pattern. Migration is an ancient and life-saving response to various social situations that arise in society. Historically, migrations of human population is said to have begun with the movement of Homo erectus out of Africa across Eurasia about 1.75 million years ago. So, what is the acceptable definition of migration? So, the acceptable definition of migration involves two significant and major parameters. First of all, it should ideally involve movement from one place to another with a relative permanence and significant distance. Secondly, it should also entail a change of residence. So what is the character of migration? Migration happened initially as an escapade. Escapade could be from harsh weather conditions and or natural adversities. Later phases of history have witnessed migration for various reasons. If it was involuntary, then it was for reason of slave trade. human trafficking, or ethnic cleansing. If it was for voluntary migration, it was for searching for a rosy future. So cut to modern times, definitions and notions of migration have changed way beyond our imagination. Migration, which was once an involuntary affair, has become now a necessity. Migration has led to new terms and definitions of migrants. They have turned transnational entities now. So let us first look at the origin of rights of migrant workers at the macro level. The International Labour Organization was the first organization ever to have addressed the rights of migrant workers at the international level. This organization was created in 1999 at the time of Versailles Treaty and the establishment of the League of Nations. And its original constitution had already mentioned the protection of interest of workers when employed in countries other than their own. So now, let us look at the International Convention. The International Convention on the Protection of Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of their Family was adopted by the United Nations. I'll share the screen now. So considering the vulnerability of migrant workers and members of their families taking into account the principles embodied in the basic instruments of the United Nations concerning human rights in particular, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Economic and Social Cultural Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the principles and standards set forth in various instruments within the framework of the International Labour Organization, the Convention came into being. So the International Convention on the Protection of Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of the Family was adopted in the year 1990 by the United Nations by General Assembly Resolution 45 of 1990. So far, only 55 member states have ratified the treaty. No major Western migration receiving state has signed the treaty, and notably, India has not signed the treaty. This treaty came into effect on 1/7/2003 upon ratification by 20 countries. Passing here for a moment, though the treaty has not been signed by India, His Lordship Mr. Justice V. Ramasubramanian made useful reference to this treaty while dealing a writ petition in WP number 3888 of 2007. S. Seturaja versus the Chief Secretary and others in the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court. So one of the issues in that case was relating to bringing back the dead body of a migrant workman from Malaysia. The point to be noted here is that though India does not appear to have ratified the said convention, Article 51 of the Constitution mandates that the state shall endeavor to foster respect for international law and treaty obligations in dealings of the organized people with one another. It is now well settled that in the absence of a contrary legislation, municipal courts in India would respect rules of international law. It is equally well settled that the provisions of international conventions which elucidate and effectuate the fundamental rights can be relied upon by the courts in India as their facets and can be enforced as such. So let us look at the origin of the Interstate Migrant Workman Act at the micro level. So the history of the Interstate Migrant Workman, Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Service, 1979. The object of bringing out this legislation can be traced from history of the employment system of interstate migrant labor. Unfortunately, this exploitative labor system was prevalent almost all over India from time immemorial. Migrant workers called Dadan in Orissa were sent for work outside the state in large construction projects through contractors or agents. They were exploited and abused with no fixed working hour and non-payment of promised wages. So the question of protection and welfare of migrant workers was discussed by the 20th session of Labour Ministers Conference held on 26th October 1976 at New Delhi. So recommendation was made to set up a compact committee to examine migrant worker issue and suggest measures to eliminate abuses. So in February 1977, compact committee was constituted. So compact committee recommended for enacting a separate central legislation. So the committee also felt that the provisions of the existing Contract Labour Regulation and Abolition Act 1970 was insufficient. Then the Interstate Migrant Workman Act bill was passed by the Parliament. It received the assent of President on 11th June 1979. The Act came into force on 2/10/1980 as Act 30 of 1979. Now, let us have a bird's eye view of the Act. So Interstate Migrant Workman Regulations of Employment and Conditions of Services Act 1979. It's called Act 30 of 1979. It extends to whole of India and it came into force on 2/10/1980. So Section 1, subsection 4, Clause A says it applies to every establishment in which 5 or more interstate migrant workmen, whether addition to other workmen, are employed or who are employed on any day of the preceding 12 months. It applies to every contractor who employs or who employed 5 or more interstate migrant workmen, whether in addition to other workmen or on any day of the preceding 12 months. See, some of the important definitions of the Act are Section 2B of the Act defines contractor. So contractor in relation to an establishment means a person who undertakes, whether as an independent contractor, agent, employee, or otherwise, to produce a given result for the establishment, other than mere supply of goods or articles of manufacture to such establishment, or by the employment of workmen or to supply workmen establishment, and includes a subcontractor, katadar, sardar, agent, or any other person by whatever name who recruits or employs workmen. Section 2D defines establishment. Establishment means any office or department of the government or a local authority or any place where industry, trade, business, manufacture, or occupation is carried on. Section 2E defines interstate migrant workmen. So interstate migrant workmen means any person who is recruited by or through a contractor in one state under an agreement or other arrangement for employment in an establishment in another state, whether with or without the knowledge of the principal employer in relation to such establishment. Stopping here for a moment, the word employed here is migrants, interstate migrant workman means any person who is recruited by. Here the term employed is not used, the word used is recruited. Section 2G defines principal employer. So principal employer means in relation to any office or department of the government or a local authority, the head of that office, department or authority, or such other officer as the government or as the authority, as the case may be, may specify in this behalf. So in relation to a factory, the owner or occupier of the factory, and where a person has been named as the manager of the factory under the Factories Act 1948, the person so named. So in relation to a mine, the owner or agent of the mine, and where a person has been named as the manager of the mine, the person so named. So in relation to any other establishment, any person responsible for the supervision and control of the establishment. So for the purpose of explanation of this class, the expressions mine, owner, and agent shall have the meanings respectively assigned to them in class J, class L, class C of subsection 1 of section 2 of the Mines Act 1935 or Act 38 1952. Section H, the word recruitment which we saw in the previous section. Section H, recruitment, it includes, it's an inclusive definition. It says recruitment includes entering into any agreement or other arrangement for recruitment, and all its grammatical variations and cognate expressions shall be construed accordingly. Section 2I defines wages. It says wages shall have the meaning assigned to it in class 6 of section 2 of the Payment of Wages Act 1936. So section 2J defines workman. Workman means any person employed in or in connection with the work of any establishment to do any skilled, semi-skilled or unskilled manual, supervisory, technical or clerical work for hire or reward, whether the terms of employment be expressed or implied, but does not include any such person, who is employed mainly in a managerial or administration capacity, or who being employed in a supervisory capacity draws wages exceeding 500 rupees per month sum, exercises either by the nature of the duties attached to the office or by reasons of the power vested in him, functions mainly of a managerial nature. So any reference in this act to any law which is not in force in any area in relation to that area, be construed as a reference to the corresponding law, if any, in force in that area. So section 3. Section 3 provides for appointment of registering officers under the Interstate Migrant Workman Act. Section 3 states the appropriate government may by order notified in the official gazette appoint such persons, being officers of government, as it thinks fit to be the registering officer for the purpose of this chapter, and define limits within which a registering officer shall exercise the powers conferred on him under this act. So section 4, registration of certain establishments. These are all the very important sections of the Act. Every principal employer of an establishment to which this Act applies shall, within such period as the appropriate government may, by notification in the official gazette, fix in this behalf, with respect to establishments generally, or with respect to any class of them, make an application to the registering officer in such form and manner on payment of such fees as may be prescribed for the registration of the establishment, provided that the registering officer may entertain any such application for registration after the expiry of the period fixed in their behalf, if the registering officer is satisfied that the applicant was prevented by sufficient cause from making the application in time. Within 1 month after the receipt of an application for registration and subsection 1, the registering officer shall, if the application is complete in all respects, register the establishment and issue to the principal employer of the establishment a certificate of registration in the prescribed form. And if the application is not complete, return the application to the principal employer of the establishment, where within a period of 1 month after the receipt of an application for registration of an application under subsection 1, the registering officer does not grant under class A of subsection 2 the certificate of registration applied for and does not return the application to class B of that subsection, the registering officer shall, within 15 days of the receipt of an application in this behalf from the principal employer, register the establishment and issue the principal employer a certificate of registration in the prescribed form. Section 5 provides for revocation of registration in certain cases, where the applicant obtains a registration through misrepresentation, suppression of any material fact, or any other reason. The registering officer has powers to revoke the registration after giving an opportunity of being heard. The registering officer can issue the notice and ask him to show cause why the revocation cannot be effected. Section 6, prohibition against employment of interstate migrant workmen without registration. So no principal employer of an establishment to which this Act applies shall employ interstate migrant workmen in the establishment unless a certificate of registration in respect of such establishment is issued under this Act is in force. Now, the duties and obligations of the contractor. This is the most important part of the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act, which is being agitated before the courts by way of a public interest litigation now. Section 12 says it shall be the duty of every contractor to furnish such particulars and in such form as may be prescribed to the specified authority in the state from which an interstate migrant workman is recruited and in the state in which such workman is employed within 15 days from the date of recruitment. The point here is within 15 days from the date of recruitment, not 15 days from the date of employment, or as the case may be, the date of employment, or where any change occurs in any of the particulars so furnished, such a change shall be notified to the specified authorities of both the states. To issue every interstate migrant workman a passbook affixed with a passport size of photograph of the workman and indicating in Hindi and English languages, and where the language of the workman is not Hindi or English, also in the language of the workman, the name and place of the establishment wherein the workman is employed, the period of employment, the proposed rates and mode of payment of wages, the displacement allowance payable, the return fare payable to the workman on the expiry of the period of his employment, and in such contingencies as may be prescribed, and in such other contingencies as may be specified in the contract of employment, and then deductions made, and such other particulars as may be prescribed. It is his duty to furnish in respect of every interstate migrant workman who ceased to be employed a return in such form, in such manner as may be prescribed to the specified authority in the state from which he is recruited and in the state in which he is employed, which shall include a declaration that all the wages and other dues payable to the workman and the fare for the return journey back to his state have been paid. The contractor shall also maintain the passbook referred to in subsection 1 up to date and cause it to be retimed with the interstate migrant workman concerned. So for the purpose of this section, section 16, specified authority means the authority as may be specified by the appropriate government in behalf. So as far as the government of Tamil Nadu is concerned, here the authority under the Contract Labour Regulation Act is looking after the affairs of the Interstate Migrant Workman Act. So displacement allowance. Section 14 provides for displacement allowance. So that shall be paid by the contractor to every Interstate Migrant Workman Act at time of recruitment a displacement allowance equal to 50% of the monthly wages payable to him or 75 rupees, whichever is higher. The amount paid to a workman as displacement allowance under subsection 1 shall not be refundable and shall be in addition to the wages or other amounts payable to him. Then section 15 provides for journey allowance. A journey allowance of a sum of not less than the fare from the place of the residence of the interstate migrant workman in his state to the place of work in other states shall be payable to the contractor, by the contractor to the workman, both for the outward and return journeys, and such workman shall be entitled to payment of wages during the period of such journeys as if he were on duty. Then section 19, it's an interesting section. The validity of the section 19 has to be tested in law. I'll just read section 19. It says about past liabilities. So the provision says, it shall be the duty of every contractor and every principal employer to ensure that any loan given by such contractor or principal employer to any interstate migrant workman does not remain outstanding after the completion of the period of employment of such workman under the said contractor, or as the case may be, in the establishment of such principal employer, and accordingly, every obligation of an interstate migrant workman to repay any debt obtained by him during the period of his employment from the contractor or the principal employer and remaining unsatisfied before the completion of such period, on such completion, be deemed to have been extinguished, and no suit or other proceeding shall lie in any court or before any authority for the recovery of such debt or any part thereof. It sounds a bit illegal and irrational, and we have to see whether legally such a provision can be sustained. It has to be seen in times to come. Section 21. Interstate migrant workmen to be deemed in employment from the date of recruitment for the purpose of certain enactments. So for the purpose of enactment specified in the schedule, an interstate migrant workman shall, on and from the date of his recruitment, be deemed to be employed and actually works in the establishment, or as the case may be, the first establishment in connection with the work of which he is employed. Section 25. So it talks about the breach of the provisions of the Act. So contravention of provisions regarding employment of interstate migrant workmen. So whoever contravenes any provision of this Act or any rules made thereunder regulating the employment of interstate migrant workmen or contravenes any condition of a license granted under this Act shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year, or with a fine which may extend to 1,000 rupees. And in the case of continuing contravention, with an additional fine which may extend to 100 rupees for every day during which such contravention continues after conviction for the first such contravention. So section 30 states about the effect of laws and agreement inconsistent with the Act. The provisions of this Act shall have effect notwithstanding anything inconsistent therewith contained in any other law or in terms of agreement or contract of service or in any standing orders applicable to the establishment, whether made before or after the commencement of the Act, provided where under any such law, agreement, contract of service or standing orders, the interstate migrant workmen employed in the establishment are entitled to benefits in respect of any matter which are more favorable to them than those to which they would be entitled under this Act. The interstate migrant workman should continue to be entitled to the more favorable benefits in respect of that matter, notwithstanding that they receive benefits in respect of other matters under this Act. So actually, it's an overriding provision which confers the benefit on the interstate migrant workman in case he is commanding better benefits under any separate agreement. So nothing contained in this Act shall be construed as precluding any interstate migrant workman from entering into an agreement with the principal employer or the contractor, as the case may be, for granting them the rights and privileges in respect of any matter which are more favorable to them than those to which they would be under the Act. So these are the important provisions which govern the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act. So as far as the applying for license and the forms and procedures are concerned, the rules govern all these procedures. So interstate migrant workmen, regulations of employment and conditions of service, central rules was framed in the year 1980. I'll just share this. So the interstate migrant workmen, regulations of employment and conditions of service, central rules 1980. The rules came into force from 2/10/1980. It contains rules from Rule 1 to Rule 59. It deals with all procedural compliances specifying authorities, fees, and forms. So then subsequently, in 2017, another rule came to be framed, which is called the rationalization of forms and reports under certain labor law rules 2017. The forms under the Contract Labor Regulation Abolition Act 1970, Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation Employment and Conditions of Service Act 1979, and the Building and Other Construction Workers Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Service Act 1996 have been rationalized to facilitate ease of compliance and inspection. These rules came into force on 28/3/2017, and Rule 2 mandates maintenance of forms specified in the annexure, notwithstanding the requirement of the above referred 3 statutes. So now coming back to the point, so we have seen the stringent provisions of the Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Services Act. So what ails, in spite of the provisions of the Act, why it could not come to the rescue of the migrant workmen? So globally, according to ILO's 2017 estimates on migrant workers, they accounted for 164 million of the world's approximately 258 million international migrants. So as per the 2011 census, the domestic migrants in India are estimated to be 45.36 crores in India, or 37% of the population of India. A study done by Research and Information System for Developing Countries, a New Delhi-based Autonomous Policy Research Institute, reveals that there are a total of about 65 million interstate migrants, and 33% of these migrants are workers. Laws form the most instructive part of a nation's history. So having said that, the laxity in implementation of the Act has deprived the statutory protection granted by the Act. India has ratified the International Labour Organization's Labour Statistics Convention 1985 in 1992, and Labour Inspection Convention of the year 1948. This was ratified by India in the year 1949. And we are bound to publish certain key labour statistics as provided under these agreements. So in India, Labour Bureau was established in the year 1941. So since 1946, the Labour Bureau has been engaged in collection, compilation, analysis, and dissemination of statistics on different facets of labour at all India level. It comes under the Labour Bureau comes under the supervision of the Ministry of Labour and Employment. The Bureau's vision is to make it a premier agency in the field of labour and price statistics, and to serve as the storehouse in the field of labour statistics by making the latest labour statistics available to the stakeholders. But practically speaking, it is far from reality. A report states that between 2012 to 2004, many major states were defaulters in providing information. It is ironical that major industrialized and advanced states like important states like Gujarat, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh have been defaulters for several years. So economy is not just all about the blue collar and white collar jobs alone. Black collar jobs do matter in a big way. Today, the migrant workers contribute around 10% of India's GDP. They can be called as foot soldiers and architects of modern India. But we do not even have a proper data on hand, leave alone the data of dead migrant workmen during the COVID-19 crisis. So as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, the policy note of the Department of Labour and Employment for the year 2019-2020 says that during the period from 1/4/2018 to 31/3/2019, 6 registration certificates and 10 licenses were issued to the principal employers and contractors, respectively under the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act. So in respect of construction industry, it says 21,538 interstate migrant workmen have been registered as on 31/3/2019. But do these figures really give us the real picture? I don't think so. Because the mass exodus of migrant workmen that we saw in Tamil Nadu, then actually the numbers were in lakhs and lakhs. And the absence of data on hand showed that the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act has not been enforced efficiently. So the preamble of the Indian Constitution declares that India to be a socialist democratic republic. So I will close this talk with a small personal note that it is high time that the governments realize the importance of enforcing legislation in its letter and spirit. Let not the institutional sclerosis affect and deprive the migrants of the benefits of this social welfare legislation. as Bernard Shaw put it, the worst sin towards our fellow creatures is not to hate them, to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of inhumanity. Let us not apply laws indifferently. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now we're open for questions. If anyone has any question, they could raise their hand, or they could post their question in the chat box. Mr. Anand Shivakumar has a question. I'm unmuting you, sir.
Yes.
Very good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Very efficient and very well explained, sir. I have only two questions, sir.
Yes.
Basically, two doubts actually, not questions.
Yes.
The massive exodus, whatever is happening during this COVID lockdown, because of the unorganized, majorly affected party is only this unorganized sector, not the organized sector, when that even then organized sector were managed to pull over the same as of now. This is as such, the government should have, I'm not blaming any government over here, I'm not party to any party also. The government should have thought about this and forethought about this in terms of any kind of force majeure or some kind of exigency. It's more of a national disaster. As on today, what I feel is that there is no clear-cut law to safeguard this unorganized sector, mostly the marginalized sector, So, what is your opinion on the same, sir? What the government should have done to prevent this kind of situation?
No, the various labor laws were not enforced efficiently. That is my opinion. So, as far as the migrant workman is concerned, the Act is very clear that the registrations have to be made wherever the Act is applicable to any institution or establishment. See, the problem is, if you look at, as I said, if you look at the policy note, and in fact, I applied for information with RTI after writing an article in Times of India in the month of May 26. So I'm getting information from various zonal offices of Labor Department as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned. See, the numbers which have been furnished so far are not even in a few thousands. That is really shocking. So the Act has not been enforced at all, even in India. Even if you go to the websites of every state department or even the central, union ministry website, you don't find any data on migrant workmen. You don't find data on other labor welfare legislations also. So the statistics part in India, we have not paid enough attention. That is one of the reasons why we could not manage, why we could not anticipate this mass exodus in the during the COVID-19 times.
So this NPR or whatever it is, what they are going to compile now, will it be of any help to this sector, sir?
So that stands on a different footing. That will have a different bearing and that stands on a different footing.
So as of now, there is no plans as such, or any kind of plans are happening, sir, to safeguard this sector? No,
plans are there. See, already the government has decided to minimize the number of labor legislations by bringing it under a code. Now, the 44 labor legislations are going to be brought under 4 labor codes. So things are happening, but efficient and stricter implementation of laws, through that we can avoid all these problems in the labor area.
And one more, my smallest concern and doubt is that we are talking about the sector wherein they travel across India, or basically into construction segment.
No, construction sector is one of the areas. Yes, one of the areas.
The poor segment wherein this agriculture segment, they exodus, no, it's not exactly exodus. They travel from one state to another state and then they settle down in those rich cultivable areas. As such, too, for their livelihood.
Yes.
Any plans for them to improve them, sir, improve their status of living or in terms of equality in their social structure as of now?
No, I think that this question is beyond the purview of this topic.
Okay.
So,
thanks, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Wishing you a great day, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, Ms. Ramapriya has another question.
Can I go ahead and ask him?
Yes. Yes.
So Ravindran, it was a good presentation. I think if you could also discuss the recent orders of the courts relating to the implementation of the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act, it would make the discussion richer. Because you remember the Supreme Court was initially reluctant to take up the issue, and then various high courts had passed orders.
Yes, yes.
And then thereafter, the Supreme Court was also proactive on the issue.
Yes,
so maybe
yes.
you could touch upon that as well.
No, now the cases are still pending. I think we may have to wait for the outcome of these cases before the Supreme Court and the High Court. As of now, they have asked, and the government, even day before yesterday, they said they don't have a data about the migrant workmen and the number of migrant workmen died. So let us wait for the decisions of these courts. Only then we will get a clear picture. As of now, the courts have come to the rescue of the migrant workmen. To that extent, we have to be satisfied.
Thank you, ma'am. If there are any more questions, you could post the question in the chat box, or you could raise your hand. After which I'll unmute me.
Yeah, I just wanted to have one clarification.
Yes, sir.
Ravindran, this you find in newspapers now that people are moving, they are getting or given today. There was some news saying that in this sector of Tamil Nadu, you have so much of people. These are all based on some real data, or it is only an investigative journalism?
No, these are all mostly data gathered by NGOs. We don't have accurate official data. That is the truth, sir. Data compiled by non-governmental organizations in Tamil Nadu and India.
So kind of dependability is not so fully trustworthy.
So in the absence of any other data, we do not have any other choice.
Thank you.
Because the government should have had this data. Because we did not enforce the legislations properly, we are lacking data now. So invariably, we will have to rely on the data floated by these NGOs.
What kind of agency mechanism in central government or state government within the law framework?
So as I said, the Labor Bureau is there to compile all these data. Then NSSO, National Statistical Organization.
But no single officer like Labor Commissioner, something like that, factories inspector, you have different areas, no?
No, they are there. They are there under the Labor, under Department of Labor and Employment. Now this interstate migrant workman has been designated under the Joint Commissioner of Contract Labor Regulation Act. So he is in charge of all these data in Tamil Nadu, as well as Tamil Nadu is concerned.
Thank you, Ravindran.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So there's another question by Mr. Anand Sivakumar. He asks if there are any plans by the Union of India towards the upliftment of educational facilities for the children of migrant workers.
So that's a policy decision which the government of India has to take. As I pointed out, we have not even signed the treaty. The treaty which I mentioned, the United Nations treaty, we have not signed it. So far, only 55 countries have ratified the treaty. The International Convention on the Protection of Rights of all migrant workers and members of their families. In case India signs this treaty, and we can hope to see some improvement.
There's also a request for, if there are any case laws that can be mentioned here.
Case laws, right now I don't have, but I can circulate. I'll do that.
Thank you, sir. If there are any more questions, they can be posted in the chat box, or there doesn't seem to be any questions left. Thank you so much, sir, for the session. Now I call upon Mr. Shiva Shanmugam, an advocate in the Supreme Madras High Court, to render the vote of thanks for the day.
I thank Mr. R.S. Ravindran for this selecting a good topic, that is the need of the hour. Though the law appears to be so obscure, it gained its importance due to this migration during this COVID times. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't have to blame anyone now, but this act has revived the interest now. One larger question that affects me is whether this act still holds fort now that the government has tabled 4 courts in the parliament. All the labor legislations has been converted into 4 courts, and now these 4 courts were tabled by the government in the parliament. So what will happen to this act, and how the enforceability of this act is for us to wait and see. But you took us through the history and the interesting aspects of the act and the important provisions of the act, and we thank you, sir, for enlightening us on this hitherto unknown piece of legislation. We thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you so
again.
much for giving me the opportunity. It was a good learning experience for me to prepare for this.
Thank you very much, Ravindran. Thanks on behalf of all the participants. Thank you very much.
And thanks, sorry for the glitch. I got delayed.